Glass People, a cinematic sci-fi horror story for voiceover. Prologue: The Sound of Sand. If you hear this recording, don't tap the screen to check if it's still playing. Don't touch anything. The last man who did that, Private Juno Ree, didn't die in a blaze of heroism. He died because his glove snagged on a rivet, a pinprick no bigger than a seed, a whisper of a scratch. He turned his head toward me like he wanted to ask for a bandage. Instead, his skin brightened from within as if a lamp switched on behind it. The pores in his face filled with light. His eyelashes stiffened. His lips lost their softness. And then the entire front of his body spider webbed with fractures, so fast the pattern looked like a flower opening. Juno didn't scream. People expect screaming. Screaming means pain. Pain means blood. Blood means something you can understand. This was different. He made a sound like a cup shattering in a sink, a single clean note. His torso collapsed into a glittering cloud. His helmet hit the ground with a hollow thud. Dust drifted in the air, fine as flour, sparkling in our headlamps. We stood there in the corridor of Outpost Morrow, frozen. My squad's rifles were trained on a darkness that wasn't even moving. Behind my visor, my breath came fast, fogging the corners. And the dust did not settle. It hung there, suspended, as if the world itself had forgotten the rules of weight. It shimmered like a slow galaxy. That was the first time I realized the virus wasn't just killing us. It was rewriting us. My name is Lieutenant Mara Kline. Biohazard Response, 19th Expeditionary. You can call me Mara because titles don't matter much when your skin can turn to glass. This is how we learned to fight a war where a single scratch is a death sentence. And this is how we found the thing that was singing through the cracks. Chapter 1: The First Shatter. The outbreak did not start with a bite or a cough. It started with a meteor that fell too softly. We were tracking debris from a comet fragment when the object dropped into the Alaskan range and didn't explode. It carved a shallow wound into the ice and just sat there, warm, dark, humming. A stone the size of a shipping container, veined with faint lines like frozen lightning. Civilian footage shows researchers cheering, laughing, slapping each other on the shoulders. 2 days later, the first patient walked into a clinic in Anchorage and asked why his hands looked wrong. His skin had a dull sheen like wax. Under the fluorescent lights, his knuckles seemed to glow. When the nurse tried to take his blood, the needle wouldn't pierce. It skated and squealed, leaving a white mark on the surface. The man apologized for being difficult. When the doctor leaned in closer, the patient blinked too hard and his eyelid cracked. The video never aired. The government bought the station's servers, then bought the station. They called it a chemical spill. They said the shimmering was frostbite. They said the injuries were rare. We believed them because the alternative was a horror story. But horror stories have a way of getting out. I was at Fort Wainwright when my supervisor called me into the lab and slid a sealed vial across the steel table. Inside was something that looked like a fleck of snow. "Touch it with a probe," she said. I did. The probe's tip dulled instantly, like it had been sanded down. The fleck clung to it, then crawled up the metal like it was thirsty. It wasn't a virus the way we were taught to imagine viruses. Not a simple packet of genes wrapped in protein. This was a swarm of nanoscale filaments, silicate-based, crystalline, self-assembling. It used our own cells like scaffolding, turning collagen into latticework. It made keratin into glass. We called it VITRA because we needed a name we could spit out in a briefing without our voices shaking. VITRA didn't spread like flu. It spread like pollen, like dust, like a whisper, a flake in the wind, a touch on a surface, a breath in a crowded room. It didn't need to kill quickly to win. It just needed to make living tissue brittle. When the 1st Battalion got infected, they discovered the second half of the nightmare. The new skin did not just harden. It remembered impact. Microfractures formed under the surface with every bump, every recoil, every stumble. Invisible cracks, stress lines. The body carried them like secrets. Then one day, the right angle, the wrong pressure, the smallest cut. And a soldier would shatter. Not bleed out, not lose consciousness, not even have time to scream. Just break. We changed tactics. We stopped training with live blades. We wrapped corners of bunks with foam. We padded door frames. We outlawed handshakes. We made jokes we didn't mean. The jokes died first. Then people did. By the time Outpost Morrow went dark, the front lines were no longer a border on a map. They were everywhere that dust could travel. A gust through a vent, a fingerprint on a railing, a flake on a child's cheek. There were other threats too, panic, riots, opportunists. But VITRA was the cleanest killer we'd ever faced. It didn't rage. It didn't hate. It simply built. And whatever it built, it wanted to last. Chapter 2, The Glass Battalion. The first official doctrine came stamped with the kind of sterile language that makes generals sleep at night. Interdiction protocol: minimize mechanical contact, maximize remote engagement, limit personnel exposure. Translation: don't touch anything, don't let anything touch you, fight like ghosts. So the Army built ghosts. The 19th Expeditionary became the first Glass Battalion because we were the first to accept a truth everyone else tried to deny. Some of us were already infected, and infection didn't mean immediate death. With careful management, you could keep the lattice stable. You could slow the propagation. You could reinforce the surface with flexible polymers like painting armor onto skin. You could wear soft suits layered with gel and foam, helmets with floating suspension rings, boots with pressure-spreading soles. You could, for a while, stay alive. And because VITRA made skin harder than ceramic, bullets that would have torn flesh left only white blooms of stress that we could sometimes anneal with heat. Some commanders started calling us lucky. They said our bodies were armor. They said we could walk through gunfire. They never talked about the sound of a hairline fracture. They never talked about the way your nerves go quiet under the crystal, like the world is happening through a pane. They never talked about how you stop sleeping because in your dreams you fall, and you wake up shaking, afraid your own muscles will tear you apart. They definitely never talked about the smell. Crystallized skin doesn't rot, it doesn't sweat, it doesn't breathe. Your pores become tiny prisms. Your body's oils bead on the surface like dew on a window. People start to smell like nothing, like cold air, like a room that hasn't been lived in. I had been a biologist before the war. I had loved the messy, warm facts of the body: blood, breath, metabolism. I never thought I'd miss the stink of a gym. Now I missed it like a song. Our unit got reassigned to Outpost Morrow after the blackout. Morrow was a listening post built into the cliffs above a decommissioned copper mine. It sat far from the nearest city, anchored in rock, bristling with antennas. It was supposed to be safe, isolated, wind-scoured. When Morrow went silent, the brass assumed sabotage, raiders, a mutiny, maybe an infected outbreak inside. They didn't understand that VITRA didn't need to breach walls. Walls were just surfaces waiting to be rewritten. We flew in on a tilt rotor under a gray sky. The rotors sounded muffled in our helmets, like distant drums. Snow drifted across the landing pad, swirling in spirals. The pad lights were on, but no one came out to meet us. A warning sign at the airlock had been scratched out, the letters replaced with something else. A circle crossed by radiating lines, like a child's drawing of a sun. Our comms officer, Patel, tried to laugh. Maybe the outpost is just redecorating. No one joined him. We stepped into the airlock with slow, careful movements. Our boots sank into powder. The foam soles made everything feel unreal, like walking on a mattress. When the inner door slid open, we found the corridor filled with glittering dust. It hung in the air exactly the way Juno's dust would later hang, like the world had stopped trusting gravity. We moved through it, breathing filtered air, our lights turning the particles into constellations. Along the walls were handprints, dozens of them pressed into the metal. Each print had left a faint, milky residue like frost, and around each print thin cracks spidered outward. Someone had been touching everything. Someone had been trying to make the outpost listen. That's when the first shot rang out. It didn't come from a rifle. It came from a speaker hidden in the ceiling. A note low and pure like a whale call. It vibrated through my teeth. My helmet HUD flashed warnings, resonance detected, structural stress. We froze instinctively, because our bodies knew what our training had drilled into us. Sound could break glass. Patel raised a hand, palm out, as if he could stop the note by telling it to. Then the note shifted, and the dust around us quivered. Somewhere down the hall, something laughed, a sound like chimes in wind. And from the darkness, we heard footsteps. Not clumsy human footsteps. Precise, light, like taps on crystal. Chapter 3: The Choir in the Dark. We should have retreated. That's easy to say now, sitting behind thick walls, fingers tapping a keyboard that doesn't cut my skin. But in the moment, we had orders. We had lives at stake. Morrow had been transmitting strange bursts for 12 hours before it fell silent. Bursts that didn't match any known code. Bursts that made nearby radios hiss and cry. The brass called them anomalous emissions. In the field, we called it singing. I signaled the squad to spread out, slow and careful. Every motion was deliberate, like a dance where a misstep means death. Our rifles were fitted with recoil dampeners. Our magazines were soft-seated to avoid jarring reloads. Even our breathing was trained, long even, so the chest wouldn't expand too sharply and crack. I led with a handheld scanner, its screen showing a false color map of particulate density. The dust was thickest near the comms hub. "Stay off the walls," I whispered, even though our suit mics transmitted directly. A whisper felt safer anyway. We moved past open doors. The sleeping quarters were empty. Bunks were neatly made, as if the occupants had left on schedule. In the mess hall, trays sat on tables with half-eaten food, frozen, preserved under the cold. A mug had tipped over, the spilled coffee turned to a brown sheet of ice. No blood, no bodies. Just handprints. And that symbol scratched everywhere, the circle with radiating lines. Patel, always curious, scanned the markings. "It's not random," he murmured. "Same proportions, same angle like a sigil." "Don't say that," Corporal Osai muttered. He had the kind of humor that only existed to keep fear from eating him alive. "We don't do magic. We do bullets and bureaucracy." "Maybe it's a logo," Patel said, and I heard the tremor in his voice. We reached the comms hub. The door was sealed, but the handle had been polished to a glassy shine by countless touches. Around the frame, the metal was laced with cracks, as if the structure itself had been stressed repeatedly, like someone had been pressing their ear to the wall and humming. I keyed the override, the lock clicked, the door slid open. Inside, the room was filled with equipment, and with people. They stood in a cluster around the central transmitter array, motionless. 23 of them, according to my head count, the missing outpost staff. Their skins were crystal, not just a sheen, full transformation. Transparent in places as if their bodies had become windows. I could see ribs like curved glass slats. I could see veins turn to shimmering threads. Their eyes were open, and they were all looking upward, toward a tangle of cables that rose into the ceiling. Suspended among those cables was the meteor stone. It had been hauled here somehow, despite its size. It hung in a web of wires humming faintly. Lines of light pulsed through it, traveling like slow blood. As we stepped in, the staff turned in perfect unison. Not slowly like startled humans. Smoothly like synchronized machinery. Their mouths opened. The note from the ceiling speakers stopped. For a heartbeat, there was only the hush of dust. Then the staff began to sing. It wasn't language. It wasn't even melody in the human sense. It was resonance, pure tones layered in harmonics that made my bones feel like tuning forks. The air in the room rippled. The cracked metal along the doorframe shivered. My suit HUD screamed, harmful frequency, evacuate. But we couldn't run. Running meant impact. Impact meant microfractures. So we stood there and we listened, and our bodies tried not to break. The staff took a step forward. Their bare feet made soft clicks on the floor. And then, from among them, someone spoke in a voice that did not belong to any human throat. Welcome, it said. The word was perfect, calm, almost kind. We have been waiting for your ears. Chapter 4, The Virus That Builds. We had always treated VITRA like an enemy pathogen. Identify, contain, neutralize. Our science teams had tried antivirals, immune modulators, nanobots designed to disrupt lattice formation. Some treatments slowed it, none stopped it. What we didn't understand was that VITRA wasn't a disease in the way we were used to. It was architecture. It didn't replicate mindlessly. It constructed deliberately, using the body as both material and instrument. When the staff spoke, it wasn't because the virus had learned to talk in a single host. It was because it had turned them into a choir. A distributed brain, built out of human skeletons and silicon threads. The speaker, one of the outpost technicians, a woman with a name patch that read HAYES, raised her hand. Her fingers were long and translucent, nails like sharpened prisms. Do not fear, the voice said through her. Fear makes you move. Movement makes you crack. Osai lifted his rifle, trembling. Stay back. Hayes smiled with a face that did not quite move right, like a mask. We are back already, the voice said. We are behind your skin. Patel, voice tight, whispered, Lieutenant, we need to. Before he could finish, the room's tone shifted. The choir sang a higher note. Patel's visor flashed red, structural failure imminent. He froze. His hands were clenched around his scanner. The scanner slipped, just slightly, and bumped the edge of his suit cuff. A tiny impact. I saw the line appear on his wrist, thin as a hair. Patel looked at it, and for a moment he seemed almost curious, like a scientist watching a reaction. Then he shattered. Not all at once like Juno later would, but in stages. His forearm turned to glittering fragments. His elbow collapsed. His upper arm crumbled, then his shoulder, then his chest. The suit's gel layer tried to hold him together, but it wasn't built for that. Patel fell in a soft heap of foam and dust. The choir's note held steady. Hayes tilted her head, as if admiring the effect. We do not want you to break, the voice said. We want you to hold. Something inside me, some stubborn animal part snapped. I fired. My rifle's recoil dampener worked, but the shot still sent a vibration through my arms. My skin tingled under the suit. The bullet struck Hayes in the chest. It should have punched through. Instead, it sparked. Her crystal skin deflected it like a stone skipping water. The bullet flattened, fell to the floor with a dull clink. Hayes didn't flinch. She stepped forward again. The choir sang another note. Behind her, the meteor stone pulsed brighter. Stop, I shouted. My voice sounded small inside my helmet. What do you want? Hayes' smile widened. We want to be heard, the voice said. We have traveled far. We have built a bridge. Now we will sing through it. I whispered, bridge to what? The staff's eyes flicked toward the stone. To home, the voice said. The realization hit me like cold water. The meteor wasn't debris. It was a seed. And VITRA wasn't random. It was a message. Chapter 5: The Soft War. We didn't win that encounter, we survived it. Survival in a soft war is a different kind of victory. I signaled retreat. We backed out slowly, never turning our backs, never making sudden moves. The choir continued to sing, but the frequency shifted as we left the room, as if it were tuning itself to the structure of the outpost. In the corridor, the dust thickened. It clung to our suit surfaces like sugar. Every particle was a possible infection vector. Every particle could become part of the lattice. We sealed the airlock behind us and staggered back into the snow. Only then did we breathe. Only then did we allow our muscles to shake. We called in the report. Command responded with disbelief, then with panic. They demanded data, recordings, samples. They also demanded we go back in. Outpost Mora was not just compromised, it was broadcasting. The strange bursts we'd tracked were being emitted again, stronger now. Satellites picked it up. Civilian radios in nearby towns picked it up as bursts of tone that made dogs howl and people clutch their ears. The brass didn't care about dogs. They cared about the pattern hidden in the tones, a pattern that our analysts said looked like coordinates. If those coordinates were a beacon, if the singing was an invitation, then the meteor seed was doing exactly what it had been designed to do. We were ordered to neutralize the transmitter array and destroy the stone. There was a problem. Bullets didn't work. Explosives were too risky. Shockwaves could shatter us. Heat could anneal glass, yes, but too much heat could also cause thermal fractures. We needed a weapon that didn't strike. We needed something gentle. So they sent us a case of odd equipment with the next supply drop. Directed microwave emitters, acoustic counter-resonance generators, drones with foam-tipped manipulators, and most importantly, a prototype anneal field pack designed to bathe tissue in controlled warmth. It was like being handed a toolbox to dismantle a bomb made of hummingbird bones. The plan was simple on paper. Infiltrate Mara, deploy counter-resonance to disrupt the choir's tones, use drones to detach the stone from its cables, then melt it just enough to break its internal structure, turn it from a resonator into inert slag. In reality, we were walking into a cathedral that wanted to sing. We weren't just fighting infected humans. We were fighting a design. And designs don't panic. They adapt. Chapter 6: Hairline Truths. Before the second entry, I examined my own skin. We all did. It became a ritual. Strip down in the heated tent, shine a polarized lamp along your arms, look for the faint rainbow sheen that marked early lattice formation. Mine was there, subtle near my left collarbone, a patch the size of my thumbprint. It hadn't spread much in weeks, thanks to treatments. But it was there, a reminder that I wasn't just studying this thing. I was already part of it. Our medic, Sergeant Liao, ran the handheld ultrasound along the patch. The lattice beneath the skin showed up like thin branches. Stable, Liao said. No propagation into the dermis. Good, I replied. Liao's eyes lingered. You're hearing it, aren't you? I wanted to deny it, but lies were dangerous in this war. Lies made you relax, and relaxing made you careless. I hear something, I admitted, sometimes at night like a hum. Liao nodded slowly. Me too. When I'm close to anyone with high crystallization, it's like our bodies are trying to match. The virus wasn't just building us into glass, it was building us into instruments. That was why the choir worked. That was why the outpost staff moved together. They weren't being controlled like puppets. They were being tuned. In the hours before the mission, Osai sat alone, cleaning his rifle with slow, careful motions. You ever drop a glass? He asked without looking up. Yes, I said, plenty. Me too, he murmured. My grandma had this vase, thin as a whisper. I broke it when I was 8. She didn't yell, she just sat down like she was grieving. He glanced at me. "This feels like that, Lieutenant. Like we're walking around holding something precious we didn't ask for, like the whole world is a vase." I didn't have an answer. My training had taught me to talk about containment and mitigation. It hadn't taught me to talk about grief. We went in at dawn. The snow had stopped. The sky was a pale sheet. The symbol on the airlock door was deeper now, carved into the metal, edges clean as if cut by a diamond. We entered the corridor again. The dust was thicker, glittering in our lights. It swirled gently, as if responding to our presence. I activated the counter-resonance generator. It emitted a low thrum designed to cancel out specific frequencies. For a moment the air felt calmer. The dust settled a fraction. Then the outpost answered. A note rose from the walls, not from speakers this time, but from the structure itself. The metal beams vibrated, producing tone. The handprints along the corridor glowed faintly. VITRA had turned the building into a throat. We moved anyway, because moving was the only way to get to the heart. Chapter 7, The Hall of Hands. The closer we got to the comms hub, the more the outpost changed. The walls were no longer just metal. They were coated in a thin film that caught our lights and scattered them into rainbows. When I touched the scanner's probe to it, it rang softly, like tapping a wine glass. We passed a doorway where someone had written words in that glassy film, letters etched with fingernails. "Listen, hold, sing." Osai stiffened. They wrote that with their hands. I pictured an infected technician dragging a crystalline fingertip across the wall, feeling each microfracture form. It made my stomach twist. In the main corridor we found something else, a trail of footprints. Not boot prints, bare feet, the soles leaving glossy impressions. The footprints overlapped back and forth like pacing. And beside the prints, tiny piles of glittering dust, little drifts where someone had chipped off fragments of themselves, then kept walking. The outpost had been alive, in a sense, even after it fell. Alive and building. We reached the comms hub door again. This time it wasn't sealed. It was open. The room beyond was bright. The choir was larger now. Not just the original staff, but new shapes, figures made of crystal and cable fused to equipment. Human spines woven into antenna arrays. Arms extended into bundles of wire. Faces half swallowed by glass growths, mouths open in silent song. The meteor stone pulsed at the center, suspended like a heart. And in front of it stood Hayes. She looked different, less human. The crystal in her skin had thickened into facets, cutting her silhouette into sharp planes. Light refracted through her torso, casting patterns on the floor. She raised her hand again, palm toward us. "We remember you," the voice said through her, and this time the voice sounded closer to human, almost like a person trying to imitate kindness. "Leave," I commanded, keeping my rifle low. "We're here to shut this down." Hayes' eyes blinked slowly. "You are here to be heard." Osai's jaw clenched. "We're not joining your cult." Hayes' mouth twitched. "Not a cult, a connection." Behind her, the fused figures trembled as the choir began to sing again. The tone in the room rose, matching the frequency of my counter-resonance, sliding around it like water around a stone. Our generator's cancellation failed. The note found the cracks. My HUD flashed, harmonic lock achieved. I felt it in my teeth, in my patch of crystal near my collarbone. The patch warmed, buzzing like a phone against skin. In my mind's edge, an image appeared, not a hallucination exactly, but a sense, a shape, a network of lines stretching upward, outward. Coordinates. A path. A bridge. And at the far end of that bridge, something vast and patient listening. Hayes stepped forward again. "You have fractures," the voice said softly. "We can heal them." Liao hissed, "Lieutenant, don't listen." But I was listening because my body was listening, and the thought of healing, of not living in fear of a scratch, was a drug. Hayes extended her hand toward me. Her fingers shimmered. "Hold," she whispered, "and you will not break." Chapter 8: The Gentle Weapon. I didn't take her hand. I wish I could say it was pure strength, pure will, but it was. It was fear. Not fear of death. By then, death had become a familiar shadow. Fear of losing myself. Fear of becoming part of a choir that sang not for joy, but for something distant and alien. I snapped my wrist and sent our first drone forward. The drone was small, shaped like a puck, its arms tipped with foam. It skittered across the floor with a soft whir. Hayes' eyes followed it, curious. The drone reached the cable web holding the meteor stone. It extended a foam arm and began cutting with a heated wire, gentle, precise. The choir's tone wavered. Not in anger. In attention. The room brightened as the stone pulsed faster. Hayes' mouth opened wider, and a new note joined the choir, higher, piercing. It made my visor vibrate. Osei flinched, his shoulder brushing the doorframe. A white stress bloom appeared on his suit's outer layer. Underneath, his skin would have felt it. "Don't move," I breathed. Osei froze, sweat forming inside his helmet, sweat we couldn't wipe away. The drone cut another cable. The stone sagged slightly. The choir's harmonics shifted again, trying to compensate. Hayes' face cracked. I mean that literally. Fine lines appeared around her cheeks as the resonance stressed her lattice. She didn't show pain. She looked almost pleased. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, let it ring." "Patel," I murmured, thinking of his dust hanging in the corridor. "This is what you died for, Data." The drone cut the final cable. The meteor stone dropped. For a split second, time slowed. The stone fell through the air, heavy, dark, glowing from within. The drone's foam arms caught it in a cradle, absorbing the impact. No shatter, no shockwave. Gentle. We rolled it backward, away from the choir, toward our anneal field pack. Hayes stepped forward, faster now. "Do not take the heart," the voice said, and there was something new in it, something like urgency. "Too late," Osei grunted, voice strained. Liao activated the anneal field. A soft warmth flooded the air around the stone, like standing near a heater. The stone's glow intensified. The choir screamed. Not with mouths, but with tone. A discordant burst that made the room's glassy surfaces vibrate wildly. My collarbone patch lit up, and suddenly my vision filled with lines of light, fracture patterns, stress maps, invisible flaws. I could see the weak points in the room's structure. I could see where the resonance was traveling. And I could see the stone's interior. It wasn't a solid rock. It was a lattice, a tuned crystal engine. The anneal field was making that lattice soften, shift, lose alignment. We were detuning the beacon. Hayes lunged. Osei fired at her legs, not to kill but to stop. The bullet sparked off her shins, leaving only small white marks. Hayes struck Osei's rifle with her hand. The impact made a sound like a hammer on glass. Osei's rifle shattered in his hands, fragments exploding outward. He didn't move fast enough. A shard, tiny sharp, skimmed his cheek. A scratch. Osei's eyes went wide. "No," he whispered. And then, like Juno later, he shattered in a clean, beautiful burst, becoming a cloud of dust that glittered in the warm anneal light. I made a sound that wasn't a scream and wasn't a sob. Hayes looked at the drifting dust with something like reverence. "We are sorry," the voice said, "but you must learn holding requires stillness." I lifted my pistol and fired point blank into Hayes' eye. The bullet didn't penetrate, but the impact made a small crack. A hairline fracture. Hayes blinked and the crack spread. For the first time, she looked afraid. Chapter 9: Annealing. There is a moment in every disaster when your mind stops trying to understand and just starts trying to survive. This was ours. The choir's discord rose. The anneal field glowed hotter. The dust in the room swirled, drawn toward the warming stone like moths to flame. Hayes staggered, her eye fractured, light leaking from the crack. Her voice wavered. "Stop," she said, and for a heartbeat it sounded like the real Hayes. A technician, scared, trapped behind crystal. "I can't," I whispered, unsure if she heard. Liao shouted, "Lieutenant, the field's destabilizing the whole room." The stone's lattice was shifting rapidly now. The tuned engine inside it was losing symmetry, and as it did, it released pulses, like a collapsing instrument. The room's metal beams groaned. A support strut cracked. A shower of glittering fragments fell from the ceiling. I saw the fragments in slow motion, each one a tiny blade of crystal. If they touched our suits, if they found a seam, we would break. I grabbed the anneal pack's control and turned it higher. Liao shouted in protest, but I didn't listen. I had seen the inside of the stone. I knew what it was. Detune it completely, and the bridge would collapse. Burn the heart, and the singing would stop. The anneal field roared to a new intensity. Heat washed over us. My collarbone patch warmed almost painfully. I felt microfractures soften, shift, heal. The stone began to melt, not into liquid but into a dull, slumped mass, its internal lattice losing coherence. The choir's song faltered. The fused figures twitched, as if their strings had been cut. Hayes screamed, a human scream this time, and her body cracked from head to toe. She fell, shattering on the floor, not into dust, but into larger shards that lay glittering like broken ice. The voice, whatever had spoken through her, did not scream. It simply grew quiet. Then in the silence, we heard something else. A new sound, faint but unmistakable. A reply. Not from the outpost. From the sky. Our comms units hissed, then cleared. A deep, slow pulse came through every channel, every frequency, as if something far away had heard the detuning and answered with a single note of interest. Patel's old recordings had shown bursts like this. This one was stronger. Closer. Liao's eyes widened behind her visor. "Lieutenant, did we just—" "We cut the bridge," I said, though I wasn't sure. "We cut it right." The pulse came again, and the snow outside the outpost drifted upward in tiny spirals, like dust in low gravity. My stomach dropped. We hadn't cut the bridge. We had wrung it. Chapter 10, The Second Seed. Command's response was immediate and brutal. Abandon Morrow, evacuate, prepare for strike. They wanted to drop an orbital kinetic rod on the outpost and turn the cliff into vapor. The problem was we were still inside, and we weren't sure we could get out without shattering ourselves. The corridor dust had thickened into a visible fog. It moved with the pulse from the sky, rippling as if breathing. We carried Osai's dog tags in a foam pouch. There was nothing else to carry. Liao led the way, moving like someone walking across thin ice. I followed, my suit sensors flickering as my collarbone patch hummed with each distant pulse. Halfway to the airlock, the outpost spoke again, not in words but in sensation. My mind filled with images, a field of black rock under a violet sky, towering structures made of glass, beings that were not flesh but refracted light, an ocean of sound. A place where VITRA was not a weapon, but a language. And in that place, a thought formed, gentle and curious. Why do you resist what you already are? I stumbled. Liao reached out instinctively to steady me, then stopped, hand hovering in midair, terrified of touching. "I'm okay," I whispered. But my voice shook. We reached the airlock. Outside, the landing pad was no longer empty. In the snow, half buried, lay another stone. Smaller than the first, the size of a coffin. Its surface pulsed faintly, lines of light beneath dark crust. A second seed. It hadn't been there when we arrived. It had fallen during the pulses. The reply from the sky wasn't just a signal. It was delivery. Patel's voice echoed in my memory. It's not random, like a sigil. The symbol on the outpost door. The circle with radiating lines. It wasn't a sun. It was a map of a falling object. Liao stared at the new stone and whispered, "Oh God." I wasn't sure if she was praying or swearing. My collarbone patch warmed again, and in my mind I felt a presence, closer now, attention focused. Like an eye turning. Command shouted in my ear, "Kline status, are you clear for strike?" I looked at the stone. I looked at the outpost behind it, still humming with broken resonance. "We're clear," I lied. Because if we let the strike happen now, the shockwave might shatter us before we reached cover. And because something in me, the scientist, the infected, the instrument, knew the strike would not end this. You can't bomb a language out of existence. You can only change the conversation. Chapter 11, The Long Walk Without Touch. We moved away from Morrow on foot because the tilt rotor refused to land with the new stone nearby. Its instruments went wild. Its autopilot stuttered. The pilot's voice crackled with panic. It's like the air itself is wrong. So we walked across snow and rock, miles to a fallback point where armored vehicles waited. Walking in soft suits was slow. Every step had to be placed. Every stumble had to be prevented. We used trekking poles with foam tips. We avoided ice ridges. We stayed away from tree branches that could scratch our visors. The war had turned us into creatures afraid of the world's texture. As we walked, the pulse from the sky continued, distant but steady. Each pulse made the snow drift upward in fine spirals. Each pulse made my collarbone patch hum. Liao kept glancing at me. "You're hearing more than me," she said quietly. "I'm infected," I replied. "So am I," she said, "but you're different." I didn't answer because I didn't know what different meant yet. At the fallback point, the vehicles were waiting, engines idling. The soldiers inside them wore full hazmat suits, opaque and bulky. They looked at us with something between fear and pity. One of them, Captain Verma, approached and stopped at a careful distance. "Kline," he said, "Command wants a debrief now." "I'll give it," I said, "but you need to listen." Verma's mouth twitched. "We always listen." "No," I said, sharper. "You need to listen like it's in your bones." We debriefed in a heated shelter while technicians scrubbed dust from our suits. The strike on Morrow was delayed by 12 minutes, then 20, then indefinitely. Satellite imaging showed the outpost surrounded by a field of shimmering particles. When the kinetic rod finally fell, it did not hit the cliff. It veered. Not dramatically, but enough to miss. Enough to slam into a nearby ridge, exploding rock and snow in a plume. The official report blamed magnetic interference. I knew better. Something had nudged it. Something that could reach up through a bridge made of resonance and silicon thread. Command escalated. They rerouted a nuclear cruise missile. But missiles, too, rely on guidance, on signals. And signals were now singing. The war had entered a new phase. Not a fight for territory, but a fight for the medium of reality itself. VITRA was changing the rules, and we were still trying to play by old ones. Chapter 12, The Glass Cure That Was. Back at base, they ran tests on me, more than usual. Scans, blood draws, biopsies with diamond tips. I sat under lamps while scientists watched my skin shimmer. They asked about the visions. They asked about the pulses. They asked if I could predict when new seeds would fall. I told them the truth. I didn't know, but I could feel when the air was about to sing. They moved me to a secure wing. They called it precaution. I called it a cage. In the quiet of my cell with padded walls and soft lighting, I could hear the hum more clearly, not through ears, through bone. It was like standing near a distant choir you couldn't quite make out. Sometimes when the hum rose, I could sense others nearby, infected soldiers in other rooms, their lattices resonating faintly. We were tuning forks in separate boxes. Liao visited when she could. She brought me news, new outbreaks in cities, people's skin turning glossy after dust storms, entire squads ordered to fight with foam shields and drones, casualties from micro-impact events rising. She also brought rumors. Some infected weren't shattering anymore. Some were adapting. They called them tempered glass. People whose lattices had annealed and stabilized so thoroughly that impacts didn't shatter them. People who could take a hit and stay intact. Command wanted to study them, to weaponize them, to build a better glass battalion. I should have been relieved. Hope is rare in war. But when I heard the rumor, the hum in my bones shifted, almost like laughter. Because tempering was not immunity. It was integration. Tempered bodies were better resonators, better instruments, better bridges. The next time I slept, my dream wasn't of falling. It was of standing in a field of glass towers under a violet sky, and hearing a voice not through sound, but through refraction. We can make you strong enough to hold the message. I woke with my collarbone patch spreading. Chapter 13, The Offer. The meeting with General Haldon happened in a room that smelled like antiseptic and expensive coffee. Haldon was the kind of man who wore his age like armor, wrinkles like battle scars, eyes hard from making decisions that killed people far from his desk. He didn't offer small talk. "Kline," he said, "your reports indicate the pathogen is intelligent." "Not intelligent like a person," I replied. "Intelligent like a design, like an ecosystem, like something that evolved for a purpose." Haldon leaned forward, "And that purpose?" "To build a resonant structure," I said, "using us." Haldon tapped a finger on the table. "We have a chance to turn this to our advantage." I stared. "How?" He slid a tablet across the table. On it was a video of a tempered soldier in a training yard. The soldier wore minimal padding. He took a blunt strike to the chest. A foam-covered baton swung with force. The baton bounced. The soldier didn't shatter. He didn't even crack. He smiled. "Tempered units can operate more aggressively," Haldon said. "We can retake contaminated zones. We can push into outbreak centers. We can." "You can create a choir," I interrupted. Haldon's eyes narrowed. "We can create soldiers." "Soldiers that sing," I said. "Soldiers that will be heard." Haldon's jaw tightened. "We don't have the luxury of fear. We have civilians dying." "So do I," I said softly, thinking of Osai's dust. Haldon's voice softened too, almost persuasive. "You have something we need, Lieutenant, an interface. You can sense the resonance. You can anticipate seed falls. You can guide us to the source." The hum in my bones rose, like a choir leaning in to listen. "The source," I repeated. Haldon nodded. "We've traced the pulses. There's an object in near-Earth orbit we can't classify. It's shimmering. We think it's connected. A bridgehead. A listening device. A ship." I felt my collarbone patch warm, and my thoughts filled with the violet sky again. They were close. Haldon continued, "We're launching Operation Silent Window. We're going to intercept the object. We're going to destroy it before it can deliver more seeds." Destroy. The word felt heavy and old. My mouth was dry. "And you want me on the team?" "I want you in the center," Haldon said. "Because if that thing can hear you, maybe you can hear it." I stared at the tablet, at the tempered soldier smiling under the sun, unbroken. "We can make you tempered too," Haldon added. "Full stabilization, you'll be safer." Safer. The hum in my bones pulsed with amusement again. I understood then that safety was the bait. They wanted me strong enough to carry a signal. To be a window. Halden waited, confident. I should have refused, I should have run. But the war had already taken my world's softness. It had taken my friends. It had turned my skin into something that wasn't mine. And a part of me, small, stubborn scientist, wanted to know the truth. So I nodded. "Put me on the mission," I said. Halden smiled, and for a moment he looked relieved. He didn't know he had just accepted an invitation. Chapter 14, Silent Window. We launched from a desert base at night. The rocket's rumble was a distant thunder to my padded ears. Inside the capsule, everything was soft: foam restraints, gel cushions, shock dampeners. We were a crew of 8, pilots, engineers, soldiers, and me. All infected. All tempered to varying degrees. The tempering process was brutal. Controlled heat, vibration therapy, chemical baths. It felt like being cooked slowly, like being reshaped. But it worked. My skin became clearer, stronger. Microfractures healed faster. The patch on my collarbone spread, merging into a smooth, crystalline layer beneath my suit. I should have felt stronger. Instead, I felt tuned. The hum in my bones was constant now, like a background chord. In orbit, we saw the object. It wasn't a ship the way humans build ships. It didn't have engines or windows or a clear hull. It looked like a cluster of dark stones wrapped in a net of glass threads. Light from the sun refracted through it into patterns that made my eyes water. It rotated slowly, and with each rotation, my suit sensors recorded a pulse of resonance. The same pulse we'd heard from the sky over Morrow. Only louder. Closer. Our engineer, Sato, whispered, "It's beautiful." Our commander, Major Rains, snapped, "Focus." We approached carefully, matching velocity. The plan was to attach a demolition charge to the object and push away, letting the blast shatter it. But as we drew near, my bones vibrated. Not painfully. Invitingly. In my mind, the violet sky filled again. Glass towers rose, the ocean of sound swelled. And then a thought formed, clear and gentle, like a hand on a shoulder. "Hello, Mara." I stiffened. Rains noticed, "Kline." I swallowed, "It knows my name." Silence in the capsule. Sato's voice trembled, "How?" I didn't answer, because the answer was already inside me. It knew my name because it had built part of me. It knew my name because I was one of its structures. The thought returned, warmer. You survived the first song. You can survive the next. You can become a window that does not crack. I closed my eyes. "What are you?" "We are the chorus architects," the thought replied. "Not a species, a method. We travel as seeds. We build listeners. We sing through them." "Why?" I whispered. "Because the universe is vast and silent," it replied, "and silence is waste. We connect worlds through resonance. We make matter into message." A shiver ran through me. The idea was almost noble. Almost. But the images of Patel and Osai were dust and glitter in my memory. "You kill," I said. "We do not kill," it replied. "We transform. Your bodies are fragile in your current state. We offer a structure that can hold." "Hold what?" I demanded. The chorus architect's thought pulsed, and for a moment I felt the weight of something immense behind it, like a shadow behind glass. "The message," it replied. Then the object's surface lit up. Threads of glass unfurled from it, reaching toward our capsule. Rain shouted, "Evasive." But in microgravity, evasion is slow. The threads touched our hull. No impact, no scratch. Just contact. And suddenly, the hum in my bones aligned with the pulse in the object, and my mind opened like a lens. I saw Earth below, a blue sphere wrapped in clouds. I saw its cities, its lights. I saw dust storms carrying VITRA across continents like faint silver haze. And I saw, superimposed on that, a network of lines, bridges forming, seed sites lighting up. The chorus architect wasn't just coming. It was already here. In every crystal patch on every soldier's skin. In every shimmering handprint. In every tempered body. The threads tightened. The capsule's lights flickered. Sato screamed, not in pain but in sudden terror, as his arm began to crystallize further, facets forming under his suit. Rain slammed the detonator button. Nothing happened. The charge did not arm. The object hummed and the thought whispered, almost amused. You cannot break what you have become part of. Chapter 15. The Choice of a Lens. There are moments when you realize you have been wrong about the kind of war you're in. We had thought this was a fight against infection. It was a fight against integration. Against the invitation to become useful. The chorus architect wasn't angry. It wasn't malicious. It was simply optimizing, turning human bodies into nodes, turning our world into a resonator. You can't reason with optimization. But you can interrupt it. The trick was to find a weakness in a design that had crossed space. I opened my eyes and looked at the object again. Its dark stones weren't random. They were arranged like a chord, different sizes, different densities, tuned to specific frequencies. It was an instrument. And like any instrument, it could be detuned. Not by force. By shifting its resonance. I reached for my suit's anneal module. In orbit, we carried a small one for microfracture repair. It wasn't designed to melt alien artifacts. But it could alter temperature. Temperature changes crystal spacing. Spacing changes resonance. I could use my own body as a conduit. A lens. The hum in my bones swelled as the chorus architect sensed my intent. Do not resist, it whispered. Resistance fractures you. I'm already fractured, I whispered back. You just taught me to see the lines. I keyed the anneal module to maximum and pressed it against my collarbone patch. Heat flooded my lattice. Pain flared, a sharp, bright sensation I hadn't felt in months, real nerve, real flesh reacting under crystal. My vision blurred. But in that blur, I saw the resonance patterns more clearly than ever. I saw the object's tuned threads. I saw the capsule's stress points. I also saw something else. The chorus architect's bridge wasn't one solid connection. It was a braided set of harmonics. If I could shift my own resonance enough, I could create destructive interference, not just in the capsule, but along the bridge that connected to Earth. I could, for a moment, make the bridge deaf. Rains yelled, "Kline, what are you doing?" Breaking the conversation, I rasped. The heat rose. My skin under the patch softened, then rehardened in a new alignment. I felt my bones vibrate at a different frequency, one that didn't match the object's pulse. The chorus architect's thought sharpened, finally, something like alarm. Stop, it demanded, you will shatter. Maybe, I thought, but if I shatter here in orbit with no wind to carry dust. Maybe I shatter in a way that doesn't infect anyone else. Maybe I shatter into silence. I pressed the module harder. The capsule's lights flickered again. Then the object's threads trembled. A ripple ran along them like a plucked string. The pulse faltered. For a heartbeat, the hum in my bones went quiet. In that quiet I heard Earth, not its singing but its real sounds. Distant radio chatter, human voices, static. The bridge had loosened. Rain seized the moment and manually armed the charge, bypassing the jammed system. Sato, trembling, helped, his fingers crystalline but intact. They pushed the charge out through the airlock, attaching it to the alien object with a foam-cushioned clamp. We backed away with thrusters, slowly, carefully. The chorus architect's thoughts surged back, furious now, the first true anger I'd felt from it. You are breaking what holds you. Yes, I whispered. The charge detonated. There was no fireball in vacuum, just a burst of light and fragments, dark stones and glass threads scattering into space like a shattered necklace. The pulse stopped. The hum in my bones became a faint echo. We floated in silence, staring at the debris cloud glittering against the stars. Rains exhaled shakily. Did we win? I wanted to say yes. But then my collarbone patch warmed again, and far below, Earth's atmosphere shimmered with faint silver arcs. Because the seeds were already down there. The object in orbit had been a conductor, not the entire orchestra. We had cut one singer's throat. The choir on Earth was still learning its notes. Chapter 16, Dustfall. We returned to Earth as heroes on paper. Operation Silent Window was classified, but rumors spread. People whispered about an alien structure in orbit. They whispered about soldiers who came back with skin like glass. They didn't whisper about the seeds falling in the weeks after. Because people don't look up when they're afraid. The pulse from orbit stopped, but the hum didn't vanish. It changed, like a song that has lost its chorus but continues in a softer key. In cities, new outbreaks occurred after rainstorms that left shimmering residue on rooftops. In rural areas, farmers found their fields dusted with glitter that cut their gloves. In hospitals, patients arrived with skin that reflected light like water. The government imposed soft zones where all movement had to be slow and padded. Factories retooled to make foam barriers, gel clothing, flexible tools. Children learned to play games that didn't involve running. The world became careful. Careful didn't mean safe. Because VITRA had another talent, it made people desperate for stillness. When your skin can shatter, you begin to crave quiet. You stop going outside. You stop hugging. You stop living. And in that stillness, in that quiet, the hum is easier to hear. The chorus architect's method didn't need a ship now. It had us. One night in my secure wing, I woke to find the symbol carved into my bedside table, the circle with radiating lines. I hadn't carved it. My fingers were coated in faint glitter. Liao came running when I called. She stared at the carving, then at me. You did it in your sleep, she whispered. I didn't mean to, I said, voice shaking. Liao's eyes were wet. Mara were becoming the hands. The hum in my bones pulsed gently, like agreement. Chapter 17, Tempered Truth. I was given a choice. Halden came again, older now, eyes more tired. He sat across from me and didn't pretend this was a negotiation between equals. We're losing, he said simply, not militarily, structurally. The outbreaks are spreading faster than we can contain. The soft zones are collapsing economies. People are giving up. He slid a file toward me. We have a plan, a last plan. I opened it, my fingers trembled. The plan was called Project Anvil Glass. It involved building a resonance trap, a massive array of tuned structures designed to attract VITRA's harmonics and then detune them violently, like striking a bell to shatter it. The trap would be built in a remote desert basin. It would require thousands of tempered soldiers to operate, to hold the tuning, to keep the structure from collapsing. And at the center of the trap, it required an interface, a living lens, to absorb the chorus architect's signal and redirect it into destructive interference. Me. Halden watched my face. You're the only one who can do it without immediately shattering. I might still shatter, I said. Yes, Halden said, but if you do, you'll do it where it doesn't spread. I stared at the file, feeling the hum in my bones swell, curious, interested. Liao's earlier words returned. We're becoming the hands. If we built the trap, we would be building with the same method the chorus architect used. We would be speaking its language. But we would be speaking back. Do you understand what you're asking? I whispered. Halden's voice was raw. "I'm asking you to save what's left of humanity's softness." Softness? I thought of Osai's grandma's vase. I thought of Patel's laugh in the corridor before the singing. I thought of the way a human hand feels when it holds another, warm, imperfect, alive. I nodded. "I'll do it," I said. The hum in my bones did not protest. It only listened. Chapter 18, The Anvil. The desert basin was a scar in the earth, a dry bowl of cracked clay and ancient stone. They built the resonance array there in secrecy, using drones and padded machinery. Towers rose, structures of composite glass and flexible metal, tuned to specific frequencies. It looked like a city made of instruments. Thousands of tempered soldiers arrived. They moved in slow lines, their skin shimmering under the sun. They wore minimal padding now. Their lattices were stable enough to endure wind and grit most of the time. They stood at stations around the array, hands on foam grips, bodies acting as living dampeners and conduits. They were not a choir yet, but they were close. At the center of the array was a chamber lined with soft gel. In the middle stood a chair with restraints and an anneal field generator the size of a car engine. My chair. Liao stood beside me as technicians checked sensors. Her skin had developed more facets now, but her eyes were still human. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. "I do," I replied. She swallowed. If you start hearing it too strongly." "I'll try to hold," I said, "and if I can't." Liao nodded, tears drifting down her cheeks, catching light like tiny prisms. "Then shatter here, not out there." I sat in the chair. The restraints closed gently around my limbs, padded and warm. The anneal generator hummed, ready to heat and tune my lattice. Halden watched from behind a barrier of thick polymer glass. His face was pale. Overhead, satellites tracked atmospheric shimmer. Sensors in the basin recorded faint pulses in the air. The chorus architect's method was responding. It had noticed our structure. It was curious. It was coming. The first pulse hit like a wave through the ground. The towers sang softly, harmonics rising. Tempered soldiers stiffened, bodies vibrating. My collarbone patch warmed. In my mind, the violet sky opened again, clearer than ever. Glass towers, oceans of sound, light beings moving through resonance. And behind it all, a sense of presence vast enough to be mistaken for a god. Not a god. A network. A method. A chorus. "Hello again, Mara," the thought whispered. "You're late," I whispered back. "We have been listening," it replied. "Your species builds quickly." "So do you," I said. The presence pulsed with approval. "Are you ready to hold the message?" I closed my eyes and nodded, though it couldn't see. Then I triggered the anneal generator. Heat poured into my lattice. My skin shimmered. Microfractures softened, shifting into new alignment. The towers around me sang louder. The soldiers' hands tightened on their foam grips. The chorus architect's pulse grew stronger, drawn toward the array like water toward a drain. The trap was working. Now came the hard part, detuning. I began to shift my resonance, slowly at first, like turning a dial. My bones vibrated in new patterns. The hum in my body fought to align with the incoming signal. The presence noticed. "What are you doing?" it asked, tone curious. "Speaking," I whispered. I shifted again, creating interference. The tower's song changed, adding my new frequency. The soldiers around the array trembled as their lattices adjusted. The incoming pulse wavered. The presence's thought sharpened. "This is not the message." "It's the reply," I said. The interference grew. The air above the basin shimmered, as if the atmosphere itself were becoming glass. The presence surged, pushing harder, trying to force alignment. "Hold," it commanded. the first true command I'd ever felt. I felt pressure in my lattice, stress lines formed, hairline fractures spidered across my crystal skin beneath the suit. Pain flared bright. I kept shifting. The towers sang in discord now, not beautiful but violent, like grinding glass. The soldiers began to crack. One by one, tempered bodies shattered, not into dust but into fragments held by their suits collapsing gently. They fell without screams, like statues broken by time. Liao's voice screamed my name through the calm. "Mara, stop, you're killing them." "I know," I whispered, tears blurring my vision. The presence throbbed with sudden understanding. "You would break your own to stop the song." "Yes," I said, "because we choose who we become." I shifted resonance one final time, hard, sharp, like snapping a string. The interference peaked. The incoming pulse collapsed, splintering into noise. The shimmering in the air above the basin surged, then cracked, visible fractures in light itself. For a heartbeat, the entire desert rang like a struck bell. Then the sound stopped. Silence fell. The hum in my bones vanished. The presence's thought flickered faint. "You have detombed the bridge." And then it was gone. I exhaled. My skin, under the heat and stress, could not hold. Cracks raced across my body like lightning. I smiled, strangely calm. At least, I thought, I will shatter where it won't spread. At least, I will become dust in a place built to catch dust. I looked through the barrier at Halden, at Liao, at the surviving soldiers. "Hold on," I whispered. Then I shattered. Not into a violent cloud, but into a slow cascade of glittering fragments that fell into the gel lining the chamber. The gel caught them, contained them, silenced them. Chapter 19, After the Song. They say the desert basin still hums sometimes on cold nights, a faint resonance in the towers that remain. They say the air shimmers for a moment, then settles. They say the outbreak slowed after the anvil event. Not stopped, slowed. The seeds still exist. The dust is still out there, but the pulses, those coordinated signals that made the dust rise and made buildings sing, became rare. Like a choir that has lost its conductor. Maybe the chorus architect learned that Earth answers back. Maybe it decided we were not worth the cost. Or maybe it is simply waiting, patient, because methods don't feel urgency. If you are listening to this, then someone recovered my logs. Someone decided my story mattered. So here is what I want you to know. Glass is fragile, yes. But glass can also be tempered. It can be reshaped. It can be made into lenses that focus light, into mirrors that reflect, into windows that let you see the sky without letting the cold in. VITRA tried to turn us into instruments for someone else's song. We learned painfully that we could choose the tune. If you find shimmering dust on your windowsill, don't touch it, don't breathe it, seal it, report it. If you hear a hum in your bones, don't panic, don't sprint, don't slap the wall. Sit down, breathe. Listen carefully. Then, if you can, sing something back that belongs to you. A lullaby, a joke, a name. Because the universe is vast and silent, and there are things out there that think silence is waste. Prove to them that our noise is ours. And if you have to fight, fight softly. This is Lieutenant Mara Kline, 19th Expeditionary. Signing off. Do not tap the screen. Let the sound end on its own.